I overheard my daughter-in-law telling her friends, "Now I'll finally get rid of that shrew," and that I deserved a room in a nursing home. But when I read the will, it was her who had to pack her bags. The funeral home. Smelled of lilies and grief. I stood beside Noah's casket, my hand trembling as I touched his cold cheek one last time. My only son. My beautiful boy. How could this be happening? At 68, I never imagined I'd outlive my child. No parent should. The cancer took him so quickly. 3 months from diagnosis to death. Not enough time to say all the things that needed saying. Not enough time to prepare for a world without him in it. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. Mrs. Harrison, would you like to sit down? The funeral director's voice was gentle, practiced in the art of comforting the bereaved. I nodded numbly and allowed myself to be guided to the front row of chairs. People kept approaching, murmuring, condolences I couldn't quite hear over the roaring in my ears. I accepted their hugs and handshakes mechanically, a puppet going through the motions of human interaction. Nothing felt real. How could the world still be turning when Noah was gone? Elizabeth, my daughter-in-law of 15 years, sat beside me in a perfectly pressed black dress, her makeup flawless despite the tears she dabbed away periodically with a monogrammed handkerchief. She had been Noah's college sweetheart. I'd welcomed her into our family with open arms, loved her like the daughter I never had. "I need some air," she whispered, squeezing my hand before rising gracefully and making her way toward the back of the room. I watched her go, wondering how we would support each other through this. Noah had been our bridge, our common ground. What would our relationship be now? A few minutes later, I needed to use the restroom. My arthritis was acting up, and I needed to take my medication. I made my way slowly down the hallway, using my cane for support. As I approached the small alcove where smokers gathered, I heard Elizabeth's voice, unnaturally bright and relieved. God, I thought this day would never end. So many people coming up to me, telling me how sorry they are, asking what they can do. She let out a dramatic sigh. As if I need their casseroles and their pity? A woman laughed softly. At least it's almost over. What happens next? Next, I finally get my life back. Elizabeth's voice hardened. And I get to finally get rid of that old shrew. I froze, my heart stuttering in my chest. She couldn't possibly mean. Olga? Another woman asked. Of course, Olga. Elizabeth's voice dripped with contempt. Noah insisted she live with us after Harold died. She has nowhere else to go, Liz. She's all alone, Liz. Well, now Noah's gone, and I don't have to pretend anymore. What will you do with her? There's a perfectly adequate nursing home on the edge of town. Elizabeth laughed, a sound I'd always found musical but now struck me as cruel. She's pushing 70. It's where she belongs anyway. Won't she fight it? The first woman again. With what resources? The house is in my name. Noah and I made sure of that when his father died. She signed everything over to us, remember? To avoid probate, we told her. Elizabeth's voice dropped to a mock whisper. The old bat doesn't even realize that Noah left everything to me. In a week, she'll be packing her bags. I gripped my cane so hard my knuckles turned white. The bathroom forgotten, I retreated silently, my whole body shaking. How could I have been so blind? All these years I thought Elizabeth loved me. I thought we were family. Back in the viewing room, I looked at my son's peaceful face through new eyes. Had he known how his wife really felt about me? Would he have done something differently if he had? I wiped my tears and straightened my spine. I would not let Elizabeth see me broken. Not today. Today was for Noah. The rest of the funeral passed in a blur. I accepted more condolences, spoke briefly at the service, watched as they lowered my son into the ground. Through it all, Elizabeth stayed close, her arm linked with mine, the perfect picture of a grieving wife supporting her heartbroken mother-in-law. But now I knew better. Now I heard the falseness in her voice when she said, "We'll get through this together, Olga." Now I felt the impatience in her touch as she guided me to the car. As we drove home in silence, I stared out the window at the passing scenery, wondering where I would go, what I would do. I had no money of my own, having given everything to Noah and Elizabeth years ago. No home except the one Elizabeth now wanted me out of. But there was one thing Elizabeth didn't know, something Noah had told me during one of our last private conversations, when Elizabeth was out arranging hospice care. "Mom," he had whispered, his voice weak but his eyes clear. "I need to tell you something important about my will." I turned to look at Elizabeth's profile as she drove, her face composed and cool. Let her think she had won. Let her make her plans. The reading of the will was scheduled for tomorrow. I couldn't sleep that night. How could I, with Elizabeth's words echoing in my head? That old shrew. Finally get rid of her. The nursing home is where she belongs anyway. As I lay in the guest bedroom, never truly mine despite living here for 5 years, memories washed over me like waves, each one more painful than the last now that I saw them through this new lens of betrayal. I remembered the day Harold died, 8 years ago. My husband of 40 years, gone suddenly from a heart attack. Noah and Elizabeth had come immediately, helping with the funeral arrangements, sitting with me through those first terrible nights. It was Elizabeth who had suggested I sell my house and move in with them. "Mom, it makes no sense for you to rattle around in that big house all alone," Noah had said, his arm around his wife. "We have plenty of room. And we could use the money from the sale to invest for your future," Elizabeth had added, "so you never have to worry about finances." It had seemed so sensible at the time, so loving. I sold the house Harold and I had, built together, the home where Noah had grown up. I gave Noah and Elizabeth the money, $287,000 to invest. I never saw a statement, never questioned where the money went. I trusted them completely. I got out of bed and walked to the window, looking out at the elegant backyard with its swimming pool and professionally landscaped gardens. The down payment for this house had come from my money. The renovation that added the pool and outdoor kitchen, my money too, but the house was in their names. Just like the vacation cabin in the mountains, which we'd bought using the last of Harold's life insurance. "For tax purposes," Elizabeth had explained. "It's simpler this way." I'd never questioned it. Why would I? They were family. I moved to the dresser and opened the bottom drawer, pulling out the old photo album I kept there. Pictures of Noah as a baby, a toddler, a gangly teenager. Noah at his college graduation. Noah and Elizabeth on their wedding day. I paused at a photo of all of us at Noah and Elizabeth's 10th anniversary party. Elizabeth stood slightly apart, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Had the signs been there all along? There were other memories, too. Small moments I'd dismissed at the time. Elizabeth's impatience when I was slow getting in and out of the car due to my arthritis. Her sighs when I'd ask for help with technology. The way she'd schedule family gatherings when my bridge club met, then act disappointed when I chose to keep my commitment to my friends. "You know how important family is to Noah," she'd say, making me feel guilty for having any life outside of them. And there were the grandchildren, Ethan, 13, and Lily, 10, who I loved with all my heart. Elizabeth had always controlled my time with them, limiting visits, supervising our interactions as if she didn't trust me alone with them. "The kids have their routines," she'd explain. "Too much excitement isn't good for them." I'd accepted it all, grateful to be included in their lives at all. What a fool I'd been. As dawn broke, I made another troubling realization. Over the past few months, as Noah's cancer progressed, Elizabeth had been unusually busy, often leaving Noah in my care while she attended to urgent business matters. She'd started dressing differently, too. More stylish clothes, a new haircut, subtle makeup even just to run errands. At the time, I'd thought maybe it was her way of maintaining normalcy in the face of Noah's illness. Now I wondered if there was someone else. I remembered the text message I'd glimpsed on her phone 2 weeks ago when she'd asked me to find her charger. A message from someone named Ryan. "Can't wait to see you again. Last time was amazing." I'd told myself it must be a business associate. Elizabeth worked in real estate. She was always networking. But now, the pieces were falling into place. Elizabeth's business trips that often extended through weekends. The hushed phone calls behind closed doors. The new clothes. The subtle makeup. She'd been having an affair while my son was dying. The rage that filled me was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. How dare she? How dare she betray my son, plan to discard me, and probably take everything we'd worked for to start a new life with someone else? I was still sitting there, clutching the photo album, when there was a soft knock at my door. "Grandma?" It was Ethan, my grandson. "Are you awake? Mom said to tell you we're leaving for the lawyer's office in an hour." I took a deep breath, composing myself before opening the door. Ethan looked so much like Noah at that age. The same serious eyes, the same cowlick at the crown of his head. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll be ready." He hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me fiercely. "I miss Dad," he whispered. "I know, honey. I miss him too." Over Ethan's shoulder, I saw Elizabeth appear, in the hallway. She smiled, that false saccharine smile, and said, "Don't bother Grandma too long, Ethan. She needs to get ready." Her eyes met mine, cold and calculating. Today's an important day. Yes, I thought as I closed the door to dress. Today is indeed an important day. The day Elizabeth learns that her plans may not unfold exactly as she expects. Because during one of our last private conversations, when Noah was lucid and Elizabeth was out, he had gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Mom," he'd said, "I've been watching and listening. I've seen things, learned things. I need you to know I've made arrangements." I hadn't understood then, but I was beginning to now. The law office of Bradley and Associates occupied the entire top floor of a modest building, downtown. As we filed into the conference room, I leaned heavily on my cane, the weight of grief and anxiety making each step laborious. Elizabeth walked ahead, her spine straight, her designer heels clicking confidently on the hardwood floor. She had dressed as if for a business meeting rather than for the reading of her husband's will, a sleek black pantsuit that spoke of efficiency rather than mourning. Ethan and Lily followed behind us, unnaturally subdued. I reached out to touch Lily's shoulder, and she pressed closer to me. At least they still wanted my comfort, despite whatever Elizabeth might have told them. Mr. Bradley, Noah's attorney for the past decade, greeted us with appropriate solemnity. He was a slight man with wire-rimmed glasses and thinning gray hair, but his handshake was firm as he guided us to our seats. "Thank you all for coming," he began, shuffling papers before him. "I know this is a difficult time. Noah was very specific about his wishes, and it's my duty to make sure they're carried out exactly as he intended." Elizabeth nodded, her expression grave but composed. Under the table, I noticed her fingers tapping impatiently against her thigh. "Before I begin the formal reading, I should mention that Noah made changes to his will approximately 6 weeks ago," Mr. Bradley said. Elizabeth's fingers stilled. "Changes? What kind of changes?" "He never mentioned any changes to me." Mr. Bradley looked at her over his glasses. "Yes, well, he came to see me privately. He was quite clear about his instructions." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Elizabeth's face, so brief I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching for it. "I see," she said, her voice slightly higher than normal. "Well, proceed then." "First," Mr. Bradley began, regarding the family residence at 1742 Maple Avenue and the vacation property at Lake Tahoe. I held my breath. These were the properties purchased with my money, the homes I had helped create but had no legal claim to. Both properties are to be placed in a family trust, with Olga Harrison named as trustee. The trust specifies that Olga has the right to live in either property for the remainder of her life. Upon her passing, both properties will transfer to Ethan and Lily Harrison to be shared equally. Elizabeth's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she said, her voice tight. "The houses are in my name. Noah can't just—" "Actually," Mr. Bradley interrupted gently, "while the family home was indeed purchased in both your names, Noah transferred his interest in both properties to a trust 3 years ago, with your signature on the transfer documents. The Tahoe property was never in your name at all. Contrary to what you might have believed, it was purchased directly into the trust." I remembered signing papers 3 years back. "Just routine estate planning," Noah had said. Elizabeth had been annoyed at the time, claiming it was unnecessary. Had Noah suspected even then? "As for Noah's financial assets," Mr. Bradley continued, "his retirement accounts, which amount to approximately $875,000, are to be divided as follows: 60% to a trust for Ethan and Lily's education and needs, with Olga named as trustee, 20% directly to Olga for her care and maintenance, and 20% to Elizabeth." Elizabeth's composure cracked. 20%? That's all? There must be some mistake. Her voice rose sharply. "I'm his wife. There's no mistake, Mrs. Harrison. I drafted these documents myself at Noah's explicit instruction." "When he was dying!" Elizabeth stood up, her chair scraping back loudly. "He wasn't in his right mind. He was on medication. This can be contested." Mr. Bradley's expression remained calm. "Noah was perfectly lucid when he made these changes. I assessed his competence myself, and we had his doctor provide a written statement confirming his mental capacity. I would advise against contesting the will, Mrs. Harrison. It would be costly, time-consuming, and unlikely to succeed." Elizabeth looked around wildly, as if seeking an ally in her outrage. Her gaze landed on me, and the naked hatred in her eyes made me flinch. "You," she hissed. "You did this. You turned my husband against me." I said nothing, too stunned by these revelations to form words. Noah had protected me. Had he known all along what Elizabeth was planning? Mr. Bradley cleared his throat. "There's more, Mrs. Harrison. Noah left a sealed letter to be read in the event that you contested any part of his will." He held up an envelope. "Would you like me to read it now, or would you prefer to continue with the remaining provisions?" Elizabeth sank back into her chair, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. "Continue," she said through clenched teeth. "The family business, Harrison Design Group, is to be placed in trust as well, with 75% ownership transferred to Ethan and Lily, to be managed by a board until they reach the age of 25. The remaining 25% is allocated to the company's current employees, through a profit-sharing plan that Noah established last month." Elizabeth's hands were shaking now. "And what exactly am I supposed to live on?" Mr. Bradley adjusted his glasses. "In addition to your share of the retirement accounts, Noah established a monthly allowance for you of $3,000 to continue for a period of 5 years or until you remarry, whichever comes first." "Remarry?" Elizabeth's laugh was brittle. "I just lost my husband." "Yes," Mr. Bradley said, his tone neutral but his eyes knowing. "That's why I found his specific mention of remarriage. Interesting. The days following the reading of the will were like living in the eye of a hurricane." Elizabeth moved through the house with barely contained fury, slamming doors and speaking to me only when absolutely necessary. When she did address me, her voice dripped with venom. "This isn't over," she said the first night, cornering me in the kitchen. Noah was manipulated. He wasn't thinking clearly. I met her gaze steadily. Noah was protecting his family, his children, and his mother, as he should have. Her laugh was cruel. Family? You think this is about family? This is about money, Olga. My money. The life I built with Noah that you're trying to steal. I never asked Noah to change his will, I said quietly. I didn't even know he had until yesterday. Liar! She stepped closer, her finger jabbing the air inches from my face. You played the helpless old lady card, made him feel guilty. Well, I won't let you get away with it. I'm contesting the will. And she did. 3 days later, I was served with legal papers. Elizabeth had hired Winston Green, a high-powered attorney known for aggressive tactics in divorce and probate cases. The lawsuit claimed Noah had been unduly influenced and lacked testamentary capacity when he changed his will. I called Janet Peterson, my oldest friend and a retired judge, in tears. Janet, I don't have money for attorneys. Everything I had went into those houses. Don't worry, Janet said firmly. I know exactly who you need. That's how I met Marion Chen, a formidable elder law attorney who took one look at my situation and agreed to represent me for a reduced fee, payable after the case was resolved. This is elder abuse, Marion said bluntly during our first meeting. Financial exploitation. Noah recognized what was happening and took steps to protect you. Now we'll finish what he started. Elizabeth's first move was to try to force me out of the house while the case was pending. Marion blocked it with a temporary order. Her second strategy was to limit my access to the grandchildren. They need stability right now, Elizabeth told the children's teachers and our neighbors. Olga's mental state is concerning. She's making wild accusations, turning the children against me. It's elder paranoia, the doctors say. I hadn't seen any doctors, of course, but the whispers spread. Ethan and Lily came home from school asking strange questions. Grandma, are you sick? Lily asked one afternoon, her small face creased with worry. Mom says you might have to go to a special hospital. My heart broke. No, sweetheart, I'm not sick at all. Then why is Mom saying those things? Ethan demanded. At 13, he was old enough to sense the tension, to question the contradictions. I chose my words carefully. Your mom and I have different ideas about what should happen now that your dad is gone, but we both love you very much. Elizabeth walked in at that moment, her eyes narrowing as she saw us together. Kids, go do your homework, she ordered. After they reluctantly left, she turned to me. Don't fill their heads with your version of events. I haven't told them anything, I said. She snorted in disbelief. Just remember, no matter what that will says, I'm their mother. I decide what's best for them. The court battle dragged on. Elizabeth's attorney filed motion after motion, each one requiring a response. Each one draining the trust's resources meant for the children's future. It was a war of attrition. She was betting I would give up rather than deplete their inheritance. Then came the day I found Elizabeth in Noah's home office, rifling through his desk. What are you doing? I asked from the doorway. She jumped, then glared at me. This is still my house. I can look through my husband's things if I want to. You're searching for something specific, I observed. What is it? Elizabeth shoved the drawer closed. None of your business. But I had seen enough. She'd been focusing on a section where Noah kept personal papers. What was she looking for? What was she afraid of? That night, after Elizabeth went out, with Ryan I presumed, though she claimed it was a business dinner, I went into the office myself. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt Noah guiding me. In the bottom drawer, taped under a stack of old tax returns, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Mom, if you're reading this, things have gone as I feared. Elizabeth has shown her true colors. The evidence you need is on this drive: financial records, emails, recordings of conversations. I started, gathering it when I first became suspicious last year. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to protect you, and I needed time to secure everything legally before confronting her. Then the cancer came, and I ran out of time. Know that I love you, and I'm grateful for everything you've done for us. Now let this help you protect yourself and the kids. Noah. With shaking hands, I took the drive to my laptop and plugged it in. What I found stunned me. Dozens of documents meticulously organized. Financial records showing how Elizabeth had gradually siphoned money from their joint accounts to a private one in her name only. Emails between Elizabeth and her lover Ryan, dating back 2 years, discussing their plans for after Noah was out of the picture. Most damning were the recorded conversations, legal in our state without two-party consent, where Elizabeth explicitly discussed putting me in a nursing home against my will and liquidating the family assets. Once the old bat is locked away, and Noah's gone, we'll sell everything and move to Arizona like we planned, Elizabeth's voice said clearly in one recording. No one will question it. I sat in shock, tears streaming down my face as I realized the full extent of Noah's efforts to protect me. He had known. All this time as he fought cancer, he had also been fighting to secure his children's future and my well-being. The next morning, I called Marian. I have something you need to see, I told her. Something that changes everything. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, more intimate, which somehow made it more intimidating. I sat beside Marian, my back straight despite the pain in my joints, my hands folded primly in my lap to hide their trembling. Across the aisle, Elizabeth sat with her attorney, Winston Green, a man whose reputation for ruthlessness was evident, in the sharp cut of his suit and the cold calculation in his eyes. Elizabeth herself looked immaculate as always, dressed in a conservative navy dress that screamed, "Grieving widow." She avoided looking at me directly. Judge Harriet Collins, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, studied the documents before her with intense concentration. The courtroom was mostly empty except for a few spectators. Janet had come to support me, and surprisingly, Ethan sat in the back row. At 14, he wasn't required to attend, but he had insisted. Elizabeth had tried to prevent it, but the judge allowed it after Ethan himself requested to be present. This hearing is to address the petition to contest the will of Noah Harrison, Judge Collins began. I've reviewed the filings from both parties. Mrs. Elizabeth Harrison claims the deceased was not of sound mind when making his final amendments and was unduly influenced. Ms. Chen, you've filed a counter-motion to dismiss the petition entirely. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Marian said, rising smoothly. And we've submitted new evidence that bears directly on this matter, which we believe renders the contest moot. Winston Green stood immediately. Your Honor, we object to this. Alleged new evidence. It was not part of the initial discovery. It was discovered only recently, Marian replied calmly. And we've followed proper procedure to admit it. Judge Collins peered over her reading glasses. I'll allow it, Mr. Green. Please continue, Ms. Chen, Marian nodded. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Harrison was engaged in a long-term extramarital affair during the deceased's illness, that she planned to institutionalize her mother-in-law against her will, and that she intended to liquidate family assets immediately after Mr. Harrison's death, assets that were intended for the care of his children and his mother. A murmur ran through the small courtroom. Elizabeth's face drained of color. Furthermore, Marian continued, we have evidence that Mrs. Harrison discussed these plans explicitly with her paramour, a Mr. Ryan Kendall, via email and recorded conversations, which Mr. Harrison legally obtained in this single-party consent state. This is absurd, Elizabeth burst out, half rising from her seat. Winston Green put a restraining hand on her arm. Your Honor, he said smoothly, these are wild accusations with no bearing on the validity of the will. Even if such evidence existed, which we dispute, it would be inadmissible as it was obtained without my client's knowledge. Actually, Marian countered, the recordings were made by Mr. Harrison in his own home and office, where he had every legal right to record conversations. The emails were accessed from accounts Mr. Harrison legally had access to as they were on shared devices, and in some cases, joint accounts. Judge Collins held up a hand. I'll review the evidence in chambers to determine admissibility. For now, let's proceed with testimony. Ms. Chen, call your first witness. The defense calls Olga Harrison, Marian said. I rose shakily, made my way to the witness stand, and was sworn in. Marian guided me through gentle questions about my relationship with Noah, the financial arrangements after my husband's death, and my life in the family home. I spoke clearly despite my nervousness, determined that Noah's efforts to protect me wouldn't be in vain. Then it was Winston Green's turn to cross-examine me. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he approached. Mrs. Harrison, isn't it true that you were financially dependent on your son? Yes, I answered honestly. After my husband died, I gave Noah and Elizabeth the proceeds from selling our house. And now that he's gone, you stand to gain control of significant assets that would otherwise go to his wife. Convenient, isn't it? Marian objected immediately. Argumentative, Your Honor. Sustained, Judge Collins said. Mr. Green, confine yourself to questions, not insinuations. Green changed tactics. Mrs. Harrison, have you ever been diagnosed with dementia or memory issues? No, I said firmly. Yet you claim to have been unaware of your son's changes to his will until after his death. Isn't it possible you're misremembering conversations with him during his illness? I met his gaze directly. My memory is perfectly clear, Mr. Green. Noah told me he had made arrangements, but he didn't share the details. He wanted to protect me from exactly this kind of confrontation. The questioning continued, Green trying to paint me as a confused old woman manipulating her dying son. But I remained steady, truthful, and clear. After I stepped down, Marian called her surprise witness, Ryan Kendall. Elizabeth gasped audibly as a tall, sandy-haired man in his mid-30s entered the courtroom. He avoided looking at her as he was sworn in. Mr. Kendall, Marian began, could you please describe your relationship with Elizabeth Harrison? Ryan shifted uncomfortably. We've been involved for about 2 years. Involved how, exactly? Romantically, intimately. He swallowed hard. We met at a real estate conference. She told me her marriage was essentially over, that she was only staying until. Until what, Mr. Kendall? Until her husband died, he said quietly. She said it was just a matter of time, and then we could be together openly. Elizabeth's face contorted with fury. You traitor! She hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Judge Collins banged her gavel. Mrs. Harrison, control yourself or I'll have you removed. Marian continued methodically, having Ryan confirm the existence of emails and recordings, their plans to move to Arizona, and Elizabeth's intentions regarding me and the family assets. By the time Winston Green began his cross-examination, the damage was done. Ryan's testimony had corroborated everything on Noah's USB drive. From the back of the courtroom, I could see Ethan's face, pale, shocked, his eyes filling with tears as he learned the truth about his mother. My heart broke for him even as I knew he needed to hear this. As the hearing concluded, Judge Collins announced she would review all evidence in chambers and issue her ruling the following week. But her expression as she looked at Elizabeth told me everything I needed to know. Noah had won. Even from beyond, he had protected his family. 2 years have passed since that day in court. 2 years of healing, of rebuilding, of finding a new normal without Noah. The pain of losing him never truly fades, but it has softened around the edges, allowing space for joy to creep back in. Judge Collins ruled decisively in our favor, dismissing Elizabeth's petition to contest the will and upholding all of Noah's final arrangements. Elizabeth was furious, of course. She ranted and threatened further legal action. But her attorney advised against it. The evidence was too damning, the judge too convinced. In the end, Elizabeth had no choice but to accept the ruling. She took her 20% of the retirement funds, nearly $175,000, and moved to Phoenix with Ryan. Last I heard, they had already broken up. Some relationships, it seems, aren't built to last beyond the thrill of secrecy and forbidden plans. She gave up custody of the children without much of a fight, surprising everyone except me. I had seen how she was with them, dutiful but distant, more concerned with appearances than with their emotional needs. When Ethan announced he wanted to live with me, Elizabeth barely protested. Lily was more torn, but eventually chose to join her brother, rather than move across the country with a mother she no longer trusted. The first few months were the hardest. The children grieved not only their father, but also the mother they thought. They knew. They had questions I couldn't always answer, pain I couldn't always soothe. We went to family therapy together, learning how to talk about the hard things, how to build trust again. "Why didn't Dad tell us about Mom?" Ethan asked one night, as we sat on the porch swing that had been Noah's favorite spot. "I think he was trying to protect you," I said carefully. "He wanted to confront her, to fix things, but then he got sick. After that, his priority was making sure you would be taken care of." "He saved us," Ethan said simply. "He saved you too, Grandma." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. Yes, he did. We live in the family home now, the three of us. I've taken the master bedroom, something Elizabeth fought bitterly over, though it was specifically outlined in Noah's will. I've redecorated it, simply removing the expensive furnishings Elizabeth had chosen and replacing them with comfortable pieces that feel like me. The Harrison Design Group continues to thrive under the management board Noah established. They consult me regularly, value my input, and ensure the children are kept informed about the business they'll one day inherit. I've learned more about architecture and design in the past 2 years than I ever expected to know at my age. Lily, now 12, shows real talent for design herself. She spends hours sketching buildings and interiors, proudly showing me her ideas. "Dad would have loved this one," she often says, and I agree. Noah lives on in her creativity, in Ethan's thoughtfulness, in 1,000 small ways that catch me by surprise and make me smile through tears. Ethan, at 16, has grown tall and serious like his father. He's already talking about studying business and architecture in college, about eventually taking over the company. "I want to make Dad proud," he told me recently. "You already do," I assured him. "Every single day." We use the Tahoe cabin often, spending holidays and summer weeks there, creating new traditions while honoring old ones. Last Christmas, we invited Janet and her family to join us. The house was full of laughter and warmth. Noah would have loved it. Elizabeth calls the children. On birthdays and holidays, her voice artificially bright. The conversations are brief, awkward. She has made no attempt to visit, though she's legally entitled to. The children seem relieved rather than disappointed by her absence. As for me, I've found an unexpected freedom in widowhood and grandparenthood. I've joined a book club, taken up watercolor painting, even started dating a kind widower named Frank, whom I met at a community garden. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice to have coffee with someone who makes me laugh, who looks at me and sees a woman, not just a grieving mother or a doting grandmother. Sometimes I wish Noah could see us now, how we've healed, how we've grown stronger through the pain. But then I think perhaps he can. Perhaps he knew all along that we would be okay. That the provisions he made would give us not just financial security, but the chance to become a true family, bound by love and choice rather than obligation. I still talk to him sometimes when I'm alone. I tell him about the children's achievements, about the business, about the quiet contentment I've found in this life he protected for me. You would be proud, I whisper, touching the photo of him I keep by my bed. You did good, son. Yesterday was the anniversary of Noah's death. We visited his grave together, the three of us, bringing fresh flowers and sharing memories. As we walked back to the car, Ethan put his arm around my shoulders. You know what I think Dad would love most? He said. That we're happy again. That we found a way forward. Lily nodded solemnly. And that Elizabeth got what she deserved. I smiled at my grandchildren, these wise young souls who had been through so much yet remained gentle and kind. I think you're both right. Last night, as I settled into bed, I thought about how drastically my life had changed from what I'd feared that day at Noah's funeral. Instead of being discarded in a nursing home, forgotten and alone, I found myself at the center of a loving family in a home that was truly mine, surrounded by reminders of my son's love. I remembered Elizabeth's cruel words, spoken when she thought no one who mattered could hear. Now, finally, I'll get rid of that old shrew. The irony wasn't lost on me. In the end, Elizabeth was the one who had to pack her bags and leave. Noah had seen to that, his last act of love protecting those who truly deserved it. As I drifted off to sleep, I smiled. They say living well is the best revenge. If that's true, then this quiet, joyful life, this reconstruction of what was broken, is the sweetest victory of all.